Hello, everyone. Victoria Mattia here, also known as the Mom Care Coach. I hope that you're having an awesome day. So, today I wanted to complete the part two when we talk about the adrenal gland. So, last week we had a lot of information on what the adrenal glands are, what they do, what they are not, and how that can impact our understanding of its importance. I also talked about in the medical community, they don't usually use the words like adrenal fatigue or burnout. However, we are autism moms and we all know exactly what burnout is. And we also have heard of the terms adrenal fatigue. And so I don't get too much hung up on, verbiage or the technicalities of things. I just want to speak in a way that everybody kind of understands and we're on the same page. So that being said, today in part two, we're wanting to talk about what we can do as autism moms and how our four intentional needs can support us. So when it comes to adrenals. We are wanting to support our adrenal glands as much as we can. And the reason why is because we know as autism parents, at some point, no matter who you are, you're going to feel some stress. There's going to be times where you're feeling stressed, right? And even if it's because of the IEP meetings or all the doctor appointments or meltdowns or just feelings of overwhelm of having to be hyper vigilant all the time, as well as maybe work for you. There's so many things that can be overwhelming to any human being, right? So what can we do? There are a lot of things we can do. Number one, focus on our four intentional needs. Let's break that down. We have sleep, we have mindset, we have movement, and we have nutrition. Focusing on those, and that is the reason why it's the foundation of self-care for us, is because when we focus on those, they can help us to develop routines and systems in our life that can keep us out of burnout or minimize it, or help us to get out of burnout once we have gone into it. Now, every person is different. I cannot speak as a blanket statement, but I can speak that there is scientific proof that allows us to be able to understand that when we are able to support ourselves and especially our needs when it comes to stress management, there are many different benefits from that. And one of them is supporting your adrenal glands. So let's take a look at the different things we can do. One of the things we can do is supporting ourselves with um, types of herbs that can help called adaptogens. Now, you've probably heard that before. There's ashwagandha, there's maca, there's tulsi, there's rhodiola, there's all different kinds. Now, before we really get into it, we do need to say that I am not a medical physician. I am a mom of an autistic child. I am also a certified women's wellness educator, certified life and health coach, and certified international counselor. And I am the person that a lot of moms choose to come and get their information, especially when it comes to nutrition and wellness and how to proceed. Also, with that being said, I am sure that every autism mama on here already knows who her primary physician is for herself and her children. And so if you're choosing to seek that advice, please, of course, do so. And if you're needing to talk to them first before taking any advice that you hear on this channel, then do that as well, because even though I am certified in many wellness avenues and modalities, I am not your personal coach unless you have hired me. So go ahead and do what you need to do when it comes to those kinds of things. So keeping that in mind, adaptogens can be very helpful. It depends on which adaptogen you choose to use. There's different kinds and they do different things. And you do want to do your due diligence and research, and also keep in mind that one works, but what one particular herb works great for one person does not mean that it's going to work perfectly for you or even in the same way. Okay, so you would need to do your due diligence on that, but just keep in mind there are something out there called adaptogens, and it can help with cortisol in the body, which is related to stress. Adaptogens mean that it goes in the body and it can adapt to what's going on that can impact how you feel and how cortisol is showing up in the body. Now, we kind of talked about last time, I believe, that if you are being, if you're in a car chase, or if you're being, um, outran by a lion, or all different kinds of things, of course, is going to invoke that feeling of stress, and it's going to increase your cortisol, and it's going to have like heightened awareness and everything. But our bodies were never meant to keep that pace up all the time. No one should be being chased by a bear every day, or in car chases every day, or having all of these different things happening on an ongoing basis. The difference between those particular situations and us as autism parents, number one, autism parents, we have a lifestyle because of the support we must show to our children, and the need to keep them safe for themselves and for others. We have to be hyper vigilant. We have to be aware. Some of us have more support than others. Some of us have more resources than others, and that is fine. And it is important for us to acknowledge that and understand that, because, we may all have children on the spectrum, but that doesn't mean that every particular situation is the same, right? So you take it as you need. But understanding that, and starting from that place, it's important to understand that stress is something that was never meant to be ongoing, especially at such a height as it is often for autism parents. That is not just my words. It was an article that was written back, I believe, in the 90s from Disability Scoop, which is the name of the magazine, that did research and did this, found that there was a comparison between autism parents, autism mothers who has children that are in the teen years up into their 20s, adulthood, and they were able to figure out that the levels of stress that these mothers are exhibiting on a daily basis is comparable to soldiers that are in combat, not soldiers that have been in combat, but literally in those moments, they're able to compare that as in the same amount of stress. That being understood, it helps us to know that, yes, it is not just all in our minds, it is not just all in our hearts and bodies. It is actually verifiable that many autism mothers live with a constant stress that is very, very high, that can be very difficult for our bodies, and we're living with this on a daily basis. The soldiers that are in combat, they are not in combat 24/7 for the rest of their entire life. It is a certain amount of time and a time period in their history. That is not the case with autism mothers. And that is the reason why we need to talk about these kinds of things. So there's a lot of different things we can do to support our bodies. And like we talked about first was the adaptogenic herbs. Now, the next thing that we can do, and I'm looking over here, I have some things that are wrote down, is prioritizing rest and sleep. So that, of course, is one of our intentional needs, but also understanding the circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is, we can kind of start that in the morning, making sure that we are getting sunlight on our skin, on our body, within the first 10 to 15 minutes of waking. If that is completely impossible for you, as I've mentioned on the podcast before, getting sunlight on our skin before 10 a.m. is still very, very helpful. Okay. Next thing, exercise. Just like we talked about, movement is very, very important. That actually can help us to support our adrenal glands. Another thing that is important is understanding that we want to manage how much caffeine you're taking in. Many of us drink a lot of caffeine, whether it is from coffee or lots of green tea all day or matcha. I am in support of matcha and green tea. However, we do need to limit the amount because that can impact our sleep, and it can even trigger cortisol spikes for some people. We don't want to do this. We want to keep our cortisol at a normal level. When it keeps spiking and spiking and going up really, really high, that's how it is really doing a number on our stress management and our adrenal gland. So we don't want it to keep spiking throughout the day. And so we need to understand that caffeine can impact that. So you want to consume your caffeine after you've eaten. So instead of having like caffeine first thing in the morning, maybe after breakfast would be a good example. That is my dog in the back. Another thing, making sure that we're having good vitamins. Methylated B complex vitamins are very, very useful. On my website, we have something called Fizz energy drinks. It is just made up of herbs and B vitamins. It's delicious, it's methylated, and it's activated, meaning like you drink it and you can feel a difference. Not everything is like that, so I appreciate that. If you're wanting to know more about that, please do email me or comment. I do read all the comments. All right, so vitamin C also is very, very helpful. That can help us and support our bodies. Also, with exercise, making sure that we aren't having all the time these really high impact exercise routines, especially as we age. We want to opt more for lifting heavy weights and walking or Pilates workouts. Sometimes we can do some HIIT exercises, but for like a daily basis, that isn't necessary, and it can actually increase our cortisol by doing these longer bouts of intense exercises. So we don't want to do that. We want to prioritize some of the more calming exercises on a daily basis. Okay. We also want to limit the blood sugar spikes. It's really important for us to focus on keeping our blood sugar being insulin sensitive and keeping it as mellow as we can possibly. And it gets a little tricky as we get older, but one of the things that's really helpful is making sure that we're having depending on who you're listening to, anywhere between 20 and 40 grams of protein each meal. That can help us to keep our blood sugar, our insulin stable. So that's really important. We don't want it to, have huge spikes up or huge spikes down. So we need to be able to eat enough as well. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is that we want to replenish our minerals. So our adrenal glands, they need sodium and potassium to function. So we want to have important electrolytes that are natural, that are filled with lots of sugar and everything. I also have a product on my website to help with that also. You can also make sure you can make your own. You can also make sure you're having high quality sea salt in your water. Or you can also consume bone broth. Is actually helpful for helping the minerals as well. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful for you and you enjoyed this particular lesson on adrenal glands and how you can support your body. And as always, as I always say, please do take good care, have an awesome day, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Bye.